That's it. Now, stop the bleeding. Focus. Good. You succeeded. Mastering your breathing. It will open many doors for you. Now, it won't solve everything, but it will help. You will continue to grow stronger.
Thank you.
Gonna connect a few things right quick. Herbs, nature, genital area, or your sacred area, or your secret area, your Scorpio area, 8th house area, sacral chakra area, the area that's connected to the moon as far as sacral chakra goes. The sacral chakra also connected to quote unquote death, and paradoxically also connected to birth. When you think about your navel is existing where your sacral chakra is because of your umbilical cord. But herbs, the Ophiuchus serpent story, and basically just simply put how a serpent brought herbs to I don't know if I can't remember the exact story, but I done said it before. But the point is, so let me just not even try to retell that story. How herbs could help to heal, and how nature, I made a video about how nature is connected to, in essence, like a genital area. You know what I'm saying? Like nature, I used the example of how, how we have certain sayings that, in essence, point out truths, you know what I'm saying? And how some of the old school men, you know what I'm saying, especially if you're from the South, I don't know, this could be a thing that's everywhere, but like the old school men would always, be like, as far as when they're talking about like either their genital area or in essence like having the ability to have an erection, so to speak, it's like, man, I gotta get my nature right, you know what I'm saying? Or like it'd be like something wrong with my nature, meaning like something wrong with either their genitals or their ability to, have an erection. But, nature, again, points to that genital area. And I also use an example of the law of correspondence and how our body, the nerves in the body correspond to being like a tree. Because if you look at nerves, they kind of branch off and have branches like a tree, And that's also the same for like rivers and its little tributaries, so to speak, like a tree, But the nerves in the genital area or the tree in the genital area, because the nerves again branch out like a tree, but that could also be seen as the tree that quote unquote Adam and Eve bit the fruit from, was like the nervous system or the sensual, like that pleasurable feeling from that your nervous system that you get when you get aroused, sexually or sensually, or more so let's say sexually, that's that tree. The tree is the part of the nervous system and the genitals. So swinging it back to the herbs aspect, the herbs are the genital area, has the secrets, because the words secrets and sacred and sacral are synonymous with each other. What zodiac sign is known for, the most known for dealing with like secrets? It's the Scorpio sign, and it's the 8th house, ruled by Mars and Pluto. Mars, initially, Pluto later. Not politicking on that aspect of astrology, but the sacred area or the secret area, and secrets will also equate to mysteries, but the secret area is the genital area, and Osiris secret area was disconnected from him when you think about the story of Osiris and how his genitals was cut, And I also want to tie this into why some people, you'll see it in Freemasonry, and what's funny is like I wear a cloth, or I wear my shawl almost in the same type of way, but I'm not hiding any secrets. But wearing a shawl or apron, like the Freemasons wear like an apron to represent like covering the secrets or the genital area. So any form of covering the genital area in essence represents like covering what's quote unquote sacred, or a secret, hence even another name, private parts. Remember as children, instead of our parents telling us, the straight up names or the slang terminology names, it was like our private parts, So private parts, secret parts, sacred, sacral, and hence why, the virginity is sacred, because there's mysteries behind piercing through the veil of the yoni, or piercing through the veil of a virgin's, I think the name is hymen, but hymen is considered that it's like a skin in essence that's like within the vaginal area, and it's considered that if that's not quote unquote pierced, then technically the woman would still be a virgin. And also always remember that breaking virginity, or the feminine aspect could also be connected to men, because whether you're a male or a woman, you could be a virgin to a spiritual awakening. You could be a virgin to spiritually awakening. So meaning that, if you're, say for instance, if your first eye isn't open, you're still like a virgin on a first eye level. And no coincidence that a first eye, is sometimes portrayed like to be side, like how our eyes go this way, like the first eye being like, almost like a yoni, and no coincidence that also the eyes are connected to, like being like a yoni or a vagina, in that sense of it. Because also another evidence of that is, not only the vesica Pisces aspect and, it clearly being like a portal, or clearly looking like an eye and a yoni, but then also the interchangeable, words used whenever you're talking about like Indra's story, and like Indra's story interchangeably, it was when the story I told about like how he had sex with a particular, you could say yogi, or a particular yogi's wife, and then that yogi caught him, and then he was like, all right, since you want to always try to get in some yonis, I'm going to put a bunch of them all over your body, you feel me? So I'm going to put a bunch of vaginas all over your body. And also it was depicted though as having a bunch of eyes as well, you know what I'm saying? And technically, the eyes more so received and push out things. So the eyes are like a yoni in that sense as well. You see how the eyes, it receives the lights and all that from the external. You know what I'm saying? So it's getting penetrated. I make the joke about like how the sun is skeeting on everything and everybody in the round. And no coincidence that, and let me, disclaimer, what I'm saying, with everything and anything, moderation is key. And also on the flip side, extremes could be toxic. But this is not to say, and also no good or bad, right or wrong from the perspective of like, because I could feel the sun gazers might have been like, oh shit, and it's like, no good or bad, right or wrong. But do understand that, what I'm saying, like with anything, too much of a good thing could be toxic, what I'm saying. And so, although sun gazing has its healthy aspects, it could also be toxic, especially when looking at the fact that we want to sharpen our first eye vision, or our ability to, see things from the dark, what I'm saying, and from within, and strengthen our inner vision instead of strengthening our ability to receive light in a matrix or a more illusionary part of our experience. Not to say that it should be discredited because it's more of an illusion. It's just that's the fact of it. You feel me? Like, not to make it, all bad, or, which one's good, which one's bad, but also to not bullshit you and be like, this is the end all be all. You feel me? It's like, that's connected to that. You don't want to, it's like, here it is where you got your own internal ability to watch movies. Like, you got your own astral body, your own dreams, your own ability to visualize, to tap into your imagination, to dream. You got your own ability to do that, but then you staring at a projector, and it's projecting some type of, thing into your eyes, It's like that's, obviously, again, it's like internal first, external second, So bringing that full circle to the connection with, like I was saying, with nature, is that but, the nature and the herbs, the secrets, the sacral, what's sacred, the herbs carry those secrets or those mysteries, what I'm saying? The herbs carry that healing ability, because the herbs, technically, most herbs it ain't like no herbs growing from out of the sky, what I'm saying? It's like all herbs come from the ground, or from, the earth, or from the yoni, in essence, because the ground represents the feminine aspect, and like a yoni, because you plant seeds in the ground, just like semen. The seaman is planted, within the yoni, or, that light, that solar phallic light is penetrated into the yoni, into that darkness. You know what I'm saying? A seed is planted into the darkness of the soil, and then, out sprouts, this quote unquote herb. And that's also part of, the mysteries and the secrets, in essence, And again, do extra research on everything that I've mentioned. And especially like peeping out the etymology of words, the numbers connected to it, as far as like also considered gematria, but, it's like you see the connection across the board. But just more so, it just hit me when I heard that, like these herbs, like revealing the secrets of healing. And I'm like, the key aspect that I heard up in there was like, the secrets, and And I'm like, all right, because also what the sexual area does is it secretes liquids, like a secret, sacred, like the yoni secretes, you know what I'm saying, a certain liquid when it's aroused. And the phallus, secretes, you know what I'm saying, its secrets, when aroused, And that also has deeper connections that I'm not going to go into, resurrection, because in essence, having sex and manifesting, or should I say, summoning or creating a body for another soul to, be in this realm, aka having a child, to some extent could be seen as resurrection. Hence why, sometimes it's like, oh man, so-and-so baby just look exactly like mama so-and-so, or look exactly like papa so-and-so, you know what I'm saying? Like, look at his eyes, you know what I'm saying? Or Uncle so-and-so transitioned a couple days ago, and then so-and-so got pregnant, and then the child came out looking just like Uncle so-and-so. That's not always the case, but I'm using that as like, because that's just like, surface level stuff that even a person that don't even get deep into the occult or esoteric knowledge could see that. You know what I'm saying? That's something they ain't gotta read 1,000 books or, go deep into it to even peep that. And for sure, somebody who reads all of this and has these visions and, inner activation, on top of the fact that they have the simple awareness of what I just said, then for sure you see it, you know what I'm saying? But, to those, you know what I'm saying, that, to those that may not be that into it, like, again, that's just a simple way for you to see it. But that's a part of the secrets as well, you know what I'm saying? A part of the secret, sacred energy is connected to, to sex, connected to resurrection, connected to the quote-unquote death and rebirth cycle, which is connected to Pluto, which is connected to being the ruler over, Scorpio, So, you see those many connections, but the herbs, being from nature, being from the genital area, in essence, So, I wouldn't say that herbs are like grass, herbs, trees, or just anything that grows from the earth. In that sense of it, I wouldn't necessarily say it's the equivalent to genital or pubic hair, but I feel like it's more so connected to like the child, because again, a seed was planted, in some way, form, or fashion for the, the herb to grow, But secrets, sacred, sacral, secreting, 8th house, Scorpio, the part on the body that the Scorpio represents is the genital area. The genital area is connected to the sexual experience, or at least one of the sexual experiences, because, you can have sexual experiences in multiple different ways, as far as like whatever feminine aspect connects with the masculine aspect. Like the example I made with the sun in our eyes, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's like sex in essence. Like the sun is penetrating our eyes, And so the sun is like having sex with our eyes in so many ways. A smell is having sex with your nose. Our oxygen is having sex with your nose. Or the air element is having sex with earth every time you breathe. You know what I'm saying? And you could also, again, get the whole little, like, peep the game of the feminine masculine connection. The air being the triangle pointing up, connected to masculine energy. And no coincidence that it could operate like masculine energy towards our body. Of course, we could push it out as well. But again, like, you're breathing in. It's penetrating your body made of earth. You know what I'm saying? So the air is penetrating earth. Also, the fire or the light, the sun penetrating earth. You know what I'm saying? Sounds penetrating earth, going into your ear, or if not just going into your ear, like also to make it on a deeper level, sound having to deal with vibration. So that's also something you could in essence feel, because some sounds, whether it's bass or certain things, you know what I'm saying, like a bass from a vehicle or loud music, if you couldn't hear it, you could still feel it. So on deeper levels, sound would also be connected to your ability to feel things, because also that's again like connected to, like, if a animal could sense a vibration coming from the ground in a certain area, but they sensing it way ahead of time in essence, because you could able, like, some animals are more sensitive to vibrations. And when you say more sensitive, no coincidence when we talk about empaths or psychics and being more sensitive to vibrations, psychics in essence are connected to what? To being aware of stuff before it happens, so something sensitive to vibrations, could, like, you might sense those animals like all running away from an area that's about to have an earthquake or something just happening with the ground, or they could feel some type of rumbling or something that they feel that they need to go another direction. Those that's more sensitive to it, it's gonna move around. And to even show you how much more factual that is, because it is true, but let's just say that, a lot of, humans or human beings are programmed to be desensitized to their clairvoyant abilities and their abilities to be sensitive to vibrations, with all the toxic foods, all the constant scrolling on social media and watching TV all the time, and just overloading the senses all the time. You lack a level of sensitivity to vibrations and to peep out the subtle vibrations. So therefore, if you ever always notice that, all right, like the animals peep game at first, because otherwise it would be like either one or two things, like either the human beings would be moving before the animals, or at least at the same time as animals, but it's totally different. And that's for some, it's not all, you know what I'm saying? Some of us are aware to, fine tune and, amplify our ability to, sense subtle energy, subtle vibrations, So those that can do that, is going to be on the same page as, like, you know what I'm saying? Either the same page or even, being aware before animals in nature who are sensitive as well. But you see even that connection, like the sensitivity is, a way to pick up on what's about to happen. When you could sense the subtleties within the vibration, it's like, oh man, I feel weird right here. Something, a certain vibration, I don't know, but I feel like I should go take a walk over there. And then come to find out that area where you felt that subtle vibe to move around from, something that you probably didn't want to be a part of happen in that area. We'll just say it like that to not make it all spooky. You know, it's like, all right, I see why I felt that vibe to move around way ahead of time before that event even happened. And hence the importance of staying in tune, and hence the realness of the situation of like, man, anything or anybody that's promoting you to numb your senses, may not be the healthiest thing. But I ain't, again, not saying, every now and then it's okay to have little, foods that taste good and have sexual experiences. Not saying that. But again, like if you're just constantly overloading your system, to the point where, you're messing up your abilities to sense things subtly. And hence why, again, knowing yourself is very key, because everybody uniquely different. Some people, in essence, remain sensitive no matter how much, different little foods they eat and stuff like that. Their system will still remain, pretty sensitive and able to pick up on the subtleties and vibrations, And I talked about that, like with, like how you see certain, like with people who end up being big or, like quote unquote fat, from eating a lot, or just in general, but being fat from like, putting on weight. But in essence, it could be like indirectly, they may not realize it or not, but like they may be putting on weight because they're sensitive to energy, and that's a subconscious way of them trying to protect themselves, or put like an extra layer, in between them and what they're feeling, externally, what I'm saying? And it's subconscious, or without them really, really knowing it consciously, until like they, either read about these types of things or, find out more that, all right, that's probably why I'm, doing this, or they have a dream or something, and they could sense their intuition kind of letting them know that, but it, but, and I don't know how this conversation drifted from just talking about the secrets and the, the herbs and the nature, the sexual energy. It probably drifted from the sexual energy part, and sensual sensitivity and stuff like that. But, again, just seeing how the herbs, and on a deeper esoteric level. So, take what resonate, leave what don't. But, the proofs is in the pudding. Again, I just gave you every example that shows how, again, like nature and the genital area, as above, so below. Mythology is anatomy by law. The way your genitals is and the sexual experience with our genitals is the same with earth, and that's quote unquote nature, and that's where quote unquote the ground or the earth is where herbs grow from. So in essence, herbs is like in the secret area or sacred area, the earth picks up on the secretions, of the water that hits it, or the secretions from the light from the sun or the starlight, not just because it ain't bright don't mean it's not, hitting, but the starlight, moonlight, sunlight, but it's secreting into the earth, So you see again that exact example with the yoni aspect and the earth. So nature, herbs, secrets, the herbs having the certain secrets of the healing aspects, it has certain secrets, and the spirits help to bring out those secrets, aka tinctures, You know what I'm saying? Like, to the people who make tinctures. Tinctures basically in so many ways, or elixirs, is usually when somebody takes a herb and they put it in spirits or alcohol. You know what I'm saying? They use the alcohol, like you put a cinnamon stick in some vodka, you got you a little cinnamon elixir or tincture. You know what I'm saying? The spirits amplify, and draw out those secrets of that herb or plant, or using herb, but that herb, plant, fruit. It all comes from, again, growing from out of the ground, but the alcohol or spirits kind of draw out those secrets, and those secrets help us to heal. And you see, like, the whole, again, like resurrection, or regeneration, because regeneration and resurrection is in somewhat the same, and that's considered like secret knowledge or sacred knowledge of Thoth, in the Caduceus staff. You know what I'm saying? And again, how I was talking about Ophiuchus, and Ophiuchus being like the, again, like the serpent energy as well, and could be connected to the Kundalini, and it's considered the 13th sign, just like how, in so many ways, for lack of a better word, the story of, or I just say Christ, instead of saying Jesus, but you know what I'm saying, but the Christ energy and the Christ solar phallic energy that comes from up the, from the bottom of the spine and on up, like the Kundalini. So those sacred secrets being secreted, the Caduceus staff, Kundalini, the serpents, having that knowledge of, how to resurrect, and also connecting to the DNA, because when you got the DNA of somebody, you could resurrect a person through that quote-unquote DNA in so many ways. And then that's also connecting to, and I'm gonna leave on that part, but the herbs also having those secrets, sacred knowledge of resurrection and regeneration. Because when we take a lot of healthy herbs, what does it do? Oh man, you look younger. Man, you really 50? Man, you look like you're about 20 or 30. Like, man, you don't look like you don't even age. You know what I'm saying? And another terminology is, or phrase, like turning back the hands of time. You know what I'm saying? Because that also, to some extent, regeneration and resurrection is connected to time travel. Because if somebody transition, it would be like going back in time if you resurrected them. You know what I'm saying? And let's just say that, all right, something, a plant by me, I'm gonna use a plant as an example to not make it morbid, or like, because I know if you're tied to a person, it may seem more grim. Like, you have a plant that just died right by you a minute ago. If you could time it, let's say, you know what I'm saying, or it died an hour ago or a day ago. If you would reverse time or hop in a time machine and go before, back to like the day before it transitioned, in essence, and you're like, oh shit, it's alive, you know what I'm saying? So going back in time also, in essence, is like resurrection. And and again, like the healing process, is like, it causes you to seem like you're not aging like everybody else is aging. It's like, you take this herb, and that's the thing, like the cells almost like going back in time, as if, you know what I'm saying, again, like regeneration, the cells being able to regenerate are, in essence, not age as rapidly, you know what I'm saying, or looking like it's turning back the hands of time, like, oh man, you look like you're getting younger, Resurrection, regeneration, looking like you're younger, turning back the hands of time, through eating certain or consuming certain, herbs and plants. The herbs and plants having that secret, secreting the secret, knowledge, But I'm going to just leave it at that. We could draw in some other little connections. Of course, it's more of just refining, without saying the same exact thing I done said before. I tied in and I said it, pretty differently and tied in some other things to it. But now you kind of just get, again, like, all right, bam, bam, bam. I like to think of it as like space travel, connecting the dots, like, the other videos I made, like it's connecting the dots, like you see how all of that connects, So now when you even watch either certain movies, anime, you read a certain book, you see certain things, that you come across in nature, it'll even be, even more synchronistic, and you'll see the synchronicity of what I just finished saying, and connect the dots, to all these different things. But just leave it at that. Now it's to vibrate. Y'all know what it is right now. Peace.